Okay, hello everyone. Let's start with our next topic, that is nested while loops. Okay, so nested while loops are very important when we work on two-dimensional data. Okay, so if we are working on single dimension like printing a list or printing any data structure like printing collection of elements like arrays, so we can use a single while loop. But if we want to go towards second dimensional data or print things like row and columns, so we can use nested loop for it. So nested loop are very important in terms of two-dimensional data. Okay, so or three-dimensional or four-dimensional, we can just use multiple nested values. We used nested thing in if and else. So you can use if statement, and inside this code you can use another if statement, and inside it another if statement. So we generally use nested like this. In while loop we also do the same. Okay, so let's use our values. um, so for while loop, nested while loop, what we are going to print. So to understand how the loop works, let's print something like this. So if I write a 1 1 and then I write 1 2 and then I write 1 3. So if you look at these three values, um, it is just nothing but two values you are printing. It is not 11 12 13. It is representing row and a column. So let's print a matrix for it. So the first value represents row and the second value represents the column. So if you focus on 1 1, it is printing the first position of a matrix. Okay, let's move to a second row. It will be 2 1, 2 2, 2 3. Okay, let's move to third row and first column, that is 3 1, 3 2, 3 3. Okay, so what we have to do, we have to print these values. So we have to use nested while loop and print a matrix like this. Okay, so these numbers representing the location of that number or the position of that number. Okay, for example, if I'm focusing on 1 1, it is representing the first row and first column. If we are focusing on 1 2, it is representing first row and second column. So we have to print like this, correct? So to print like this, let's move forward and write our logic. Now, to understand why nested while loop, what we have to do, we have to understand that there are two logic here. The first one is what we are going to do, we are just using a loop, and inside it we are using another loop for the second dimensional values. Now the rule is the internal loop will print the value and the external loop will change the line. This is the only two rules you have to focus on so that you can build a simple logic for it. Okay, for any problem statement, internal loop will print the value, external loop will change the line. Just remember these two statements. Okay, so now let's focus on printing first row. Okay, so if we want to print these values, can we take two different variables like I and j, for example? So if the value of I is 1 and value of j is 1, we just print both the values, that is 1 1. We give two spaces and just increment both the values or increment the value of j only. Okay, so I is fixed, j will be incremented. I is fixed, j will be incremented. Just like that, this we can write our logic. Okay, so internal loop will print the values. Okay, so everything that is that has been printed here will be uh, stored in I and j, and I and j will be printed inside internal while loop. Okay, so there are two, we are going to use two while loops. First is internal, that is the nested one, and the outer while loop. Okay, so internal while loop will print the value and outer while loop will change the line. Okay, let's remember these two lines and use values. Okay, so I'm using the value of j here. Okay, let's do some mistakes and try to figure out how we are going to build the logic. So I'm starting with I and j. Both the values are 1. Okay, So now I'm going to use my first while loop. Now, how many times we have to change the line? If you want to print this particular part, just go inside the while loop and just print the values of I and j. Okay, so we understand that I will be fixed and j will change, and it will print 1 1 1 1 2 1 3. Okay, but we don't have to do this. Don't want to do this. We want to print in 2-dimensional. Okay, so first three values should be printed. After that, our program should change the line. Okay, so when these three values are printed, our program will change the line. Now another three values will be printed. Okay, everything works left to right in programming. Okay, we know that already. Okay, so let's give a condition. How many times we have to change the line? 3 times. And why we are questioning to change the line? Because outer loop will change the line. That's the rule number 2. Rule number 1 is internal loop will print the value and outer loop will change the line. Okay, so because this particular while loop will change the line 3 times, we're going to run this loop 3 times. So we can do this I is less than equals to 3. Okay, because of this condition, this loop will execute 3 times. Okay, let's move forward and give a nested loop here. I'm going to use while loop here, and because of this while loop, we can now be able to work on the second line and the third line, or second row or the third row. Okay, now because this particular internal or nested while loop will going to print the value, what we are going to do, how many values this loop will print? This loop will print 3 values. Okay, so 1 1 1 2 1 3, like this. Okay, so we are going to give the same condition here. Correct. Let's print something. So when the loop runs first time, the value of I and j should be printed. So I'm writing I comma j. Okay, and we don't want to change the line here. We want to change the line here. That means after printing 3 values, 3 combinations. So let's remove this particular part. I'm going to give 2 spaces, because after printing 1 1, it should give 2 spaces and move forward with the another. So let's go further and increment the value of j. Okay, so the value of j is 1. This particular condition, this particular statement will print 1 1. Okay, in the next line, the value of j is 2. This will rotate to this particular part. Okay, correct, because outer while loop is here. This is the indentation of outer while loop. The internal while loop will increment the value and rotate here. Okay, so now the value of j here is 2. 2 is less than 3, condition true. It will print 1 and j, that is 2, 1 2. Okay, after printing 1 2, it will give 2 spaces. After that, the value of j will be incremented, that is 3. It will rotate the loop. Currently only internal loop is executing, so this particular loop executes 3 times. Okay, so this condition will also be true, and this will print 1 and 3. Okay, so this will be printed and it will give 2 spaces. Now these 3 value will be printed. Okay, once these 3 value is printed, this loop will the value of j will be 4, and when it rotate, the condition will be false. Okay, so let's move forward. When this loop stops executing, it will jump to the outer part and execute this particular statement. So now what we want to do, we want to change the line in the outer loop. Okay, so we are going to use a print statement. If you use a print statement like this, let me print something. If I print hi, for example, and if you use print statement without anything, let's print something else here, hi bye. Okay, this particular statement will change the line once. Okay, by default, print statement uses and as /n, that is new line character. So if you don't pass anything, it will just change the line like this. Correct. So that's why outer loop will always change the line only. Okay, that's why what we are doing, we are just using print statement so that it can change the line. One more thing we have to do here, that is we should increment the value of I. Okay, why we are doing this? Because we have to change the value of I in the next statement. Now I will be constant for next three values. Okay, so when you change the line, the value of I will be 2. Okay, this will rotate. This is the outer loop. This will rotate and go here and check the condition again. 2 is less than 3, condition true. Now what is the value of I? Sorry, J. So if we consider this 1, it will going to print 2 1. Okay, 2 1, then rotate 2 2, then again rotate 2 3. Okay, so this is how it's going to work. But there's a mistake in this. Let's run this and check what is the mistake. So it is printing first three value correctly. Okay, but after that it is not printing anything. It is just changing the line. Okay, why this is happening? This is happening because when we assign the value of j, that is 1, once this particular loop executes for the first time, okay, the value of j will become 4, and because the value of j is 4, this condition will never be true. So what we have to do, when you rotate the outer loop, change the value of j back to 1. Okay, so because of this, the output is this. Let me write one more time. So let me write the same logic one more time. Also, let me copy this that we have to print and check. Okay, now what's the issue with this? We have to assign the value of j or bring it back to 1. Okay, so I'm doing this here. So let me remove this particular statement. Okay, let me write this again and make it commented. Okay, so I'm assigning or initiating the value of j here. Why we are doing this? Because the outer loop, when run iterate for the second time, the value of I will be 2. 2 is less than equals to 3, condition true. The value of j becomes 1 again, and that's the reason it is going to print 2 1, 2 2, and 2 3. Okay, this condition becomes true and it will print 2 1. Okay, once all the values are completed, j will be 4 and this condition will be false. The code will execute further and the value of I becomes 3. Okay, once the value of I is 3, this condition will be again true. Okay, and the value of j will be set it to 1 again. So that's why in the next line, when you print both the values, it will print 3 1, 3 2, and 3 3. Okay, let me run this. Is it working properly? Yes, it is working properly, but there is a mistake in this. It is not looking like the previous pattern we want to print. So this is my matrix. Let me change something, because when we use a comma statement, it will this statement will give you a single space also. So I'm not going to use a comma separated value. Let me bring it back to an empty string. Okay, so 1 will be printed. We have to print j next to it. Okay, so I'm using and here, so it will give empty space or empty string. Okay, just we are going to print j, and this time we are going to add with 2 spaces. Okay, correct. So the value of I is 1, and because of this empty string, the cursor will be next to I and it will print the value of j. After that, it is going to print 2 spaces. So other than that, everything is fine. Let me run this. So this is what we wanted and this is what we get. Okay. So this is how we work on nested while loops. There are so many questions we can solve with while loops. So let me end this video and let's focus on the next topic. Thus we are going to work on pyramid of stars. So these type of questions, pattern based questions. Okay, so that's it. If you have any doubts, you can just ping in comments, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Okay, you can ask your questions there also. Okay, that's it.